Buongiorno, mi chiamo Maria. Oggi facciamo la pasta fatta a mano. Non parlerò italiano perché io sono genovese e tutti non lo capiscono. So now let me repeat what I just said. Good morning, my name is Marie. I am going to show you how to make homemade pasta. The pasta can then be used to make lasagna and also ravioli. So here we go. Now, being Italian, my mother taught me that portions are approximates. So when I measure out the flour and the other ingredients, it's approximates. A couple of things that I do want to mention about the pasta. There are several different types of flour that you can use. You can use semolina, which is a durum wheat flour, but it's a little sturdier, much like wheat flour. I usually use the white baking flour to make my pasta. You want to make sure that when you're mixing the pasta, you don't add too much water because then it gets too sticky. If you don't use enough water, it'll be very dry, but you can always add more water. If you've added too much water, just add a little more flour. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, as I said, this recipe that I am showing you, I am using 5 cups of flour. And again, notice my cups are not leveled. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, once we've done this, what we're going to do is to punch a little hole in the middle. We're going to make a well. And you'll see what happens in just a moment. We're going to use 3 eggs cracked, and then we're going to beat the eggs. And again, you can modify this recipe to make more or less. Now we're going to add in the olive oil. And for this, usually about 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Then we're going to add in salt, and make sure it's kosher salt. I would say about 1/2 to 2/3 of a teaspoon of salt. And I mix this in my eggs because then I'm not going to use a mixer like some people do, and which you can do as well, but I prefer to do my pasta by hand. So now I am mixing the olive oil, the salt, and the eggs together. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour this mixture into the well. And as I do that, I'm incorporating it with a little bit of flour so that it can get started here. Okay, just keep adding it slowly. You don't want to throw it in all at once because your well is going to break. Okay, let's put the rest of the egg mixture in there. Then we're going to slowly add a little bit of water. And I use cold water. That's the way my mother taught me. So I pour slowly because as I do that, I continue to incorporate the flour and the egg mixture together. Now, if you're from southern Italy, you're probably used to making pasta with just water and flour and salt. But in northern Italy, which is where I'm from, we put in eggs and a little bit of olive oil. And this helps to incorporate the pasta and makes it a little bit richer. If you want your pasta to be even richer, you add more eggs. But normally, the ratio for eggs to flour is 1.5 cups of flour to 1 egg. Now, as you see, I prefer to use my hands because it's also a very good workout and it gets out a lot of aggressions. So now I'm going to add a little bit of water to the flour. and egg mixture. And again, I just keep incorporating it. And at some point you might think that this is not ever going to get together, but believe me, it will. Here we are again at the next step of this, and that is to continue pouring a little bit of water slowly around so that you can continue to incorporate it. And as you see, the crumbled flour now is starting to become more of a mass. And I have my handy dandy little baker's tool here to kind of help scrape the flour and egg mixture that's kind of flown all over the place. Okay, here we go. I'm continuing. Again, you'll see that there's a bit of dry flour, and what we want to do is just pour it onto the part here that's thicker, and so that way the water won't flow out, although it usually will. And we just continue. Here we are again. We're continuing to work the dough. And as you can see, I've got flour, I've got sticky stuff on my hands. So one way to remove that is to get a little bit of flour, put it on your hands, and you can also sprinkle it on this, and then rub your hands together. And of course, one important thing that I forgot to mention at the very beginning of this was to make sure that your hands are clean and that your counter is clean, especially in these times where we have to constantly wash our hands. This is just another perfect example of being able to do that so you can do something fun afterwards. So now we just continue to incorporate. I push away and roll back, push away and roll back, and that's how you want to knead your dough. You're probably going to need to knead this for about 10 to 15 minutes. What you're working on right now is making the glutens in the flour and the mixture work. So as the glutens begin to work, what happens is that the dough becomes more stretchy. And when we get to the next part of this, you'll see how useful that is. So now you can see that the flour ball is turning and is a little bit more smooth, but I'm nowhere close to 15 minutes, so I got to keep working this. Okay, I'm still kneading. It's been almost 15 minutes, and as you can see, the dough is forming a ball, but it's a very smooth ball, and that's what you want. Now, in order to determine whether or not you've got enough kneading in, what you do is you kind of press on with your finger. If it immediately comes up, then you know you're pretty close. So now what you want to do as you continue to knead and pull back, we're going to form this into a nice ball. And then what we're going to do is we are going to wrap it in saran wrap, because now we're going to let the dough rest for almost an hour. Some people say 15 minutes is enough. I prefer, according to my mother's guidelines, to let it rest for about an hour, because the glutens work a lot better the longer they can sit at rest before you go to the next step. So, see you in about an hour. Welcome back. Here we are, 1 hour or so later, and I have to say I didn't use my time wisely, but I am now taking the plastic wrap off of the pasta, and of course I washed my hands before I'm doing this. What you want to do is to sprinkle a little flour on your surface. I'm back again to using my counter. So again, you're going to work the dough, push away, pull back, roll, push away, pull back. And the reason you're doing this, again, if you notice the smoothness of the dough right now as you continue to work it. And then we're going to start putting it through the machine. And then I'll show you two methods. I will also show you how to actually cut your pasta if you don't have a pasta machine like I've got right here. And you'll notice that I am cheating, and I don't have the hand cranked version of the pasta maker, and have an electric one where I just need to push the button. And the reason for this is that normally I would have my grandkids cranking away, but since I don't have any, I needed to get this because I need to do the work. So what we're going to do, I don't want to cut on my surface here, so I want to cut a slice, couple of slices of the dough, and we are going to press it together so that we can put it through the machine. Now, what you want to do if you've got your machine is you want to put it on the widest setting, and then each time you'll continue to go narrower and narrower. So we're going to turn on the machine now. And you can do it a couple of times. You see how smoothly it comes out of the pasta machine. But then I want to run it again just to get it very smooth. And during this time you can also add some flour so that it won't stick together. And we'll do one more. Okay, we're going to stop the machine now. I'm going to put the other part back in the saran wrap so it doesn't dry out. And in the meantime, I have floured my dough here. And you'll notice that the pieces are very different looking. Not intentionally, but they will still work, and you'll see in a moment how that happens. Okay, so now I'm going to put the machine on a much narrower setting and run the pasta through again a couple of times. As you can see, it's now a very thin strip of pasta. Sprinkle your board with a little bit of flour and lay it down, because then in a moment we'll run it through one more time in a narrower setting. Now, if these pieces get too long, you can cut them. We'll go ahead and do that right now. Okay, and here was the last one. Again, we're going to flour just slightly and put it on the last setting that we want it on before we do our cutting. So let's go ahead and run it again through. Now you'll notice that this one is very, very thin. This would be close to what you would want to use when you're making ravioli, and that's for another lesson. But for these, we can run them again a couple times on one setting less so that our pasta is not too thin, unless you want to make angel hair pasta, in which case then you can make it thin like this. now we're going to lay this here, make some room for ourselves so that this one here, these. Okay, sprinkle a little more flour. Now we're going to change the setting on our machine, and we're going to make fettuccine. I think I've decided I want fettuccine. I have a very wonderful recipe for fettuccine and clam sauce that goes well with ossobuco, so thought we'll do that today. All right, so now we run pasta through the other setting. And you want to make sure you pick up any pieces that are left behind. Now, since these may be a little bit too long, what I like to do is I'll just trim them in half so they're a little shorter and easier to manage when you're eating them. Okay, we'll do another one here. One more. The nice thing about these machines is that no matter how close you put your fingers, you can stick your fingers in there and you'll never get hurt. You'll never get stuck in the machine. Okay, that ends this. Okay, again, I'm going to go ahead and cut these a little bit. This one was a little longer, so I'll do 4. And what you can do also is you can make bird nests, which is a very common way to just set these so that they dry. I prefer to set them out this way so that when and as they dry, I can keep fluffing them up. If they're in the bird nest version, then it's not something that you want to do. Okay, so there we go. This is fettuccine made by hand. Here, one thing I do want to mention about the machine, you do not want to put any water on this whatsoever. Get a brush and just brush it off, and with a dry towel, just get the rest of the flour off. And caution, I mentioned earlier that, you know, you can't get your fingers stuck in there. Be careful, because it is possible if your fingernails catch on, then you might be able to get your fingers stuck. Anyway, so we'll stop right here for a moment while I get ready for showing you how to roll out pasta by hand. Here we are again. This time, as I said, we're going to learn how to make pasta, roll out pasta by hand. I just take a slice of the dough from my ball, which I was doing when I put it through the machine. However, and I've just got a small piece so that I can just kind of show you. And then I just press it with my fingers just to get it started. Flour the surface where I'm going to be working. And I also flour the pasta. And then I start rolling. Now I am using a marble rolling pin. Doesn't really matter. The important thing is that you just roll this dough until it's extremely thin. And you can see it's very easy to get it to that point, and very quickly. Now this too is kind of too long, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut that in half and then finish off the other half in the same way. See, this is quite easy to make pasta, even if you don't have a machine. Make sure it doesn't stick, and of course it is. Okay, just a little bit more on this corner here, and then I think we're good to go. Now you can certainly make it a lot easier for yourself and do the dough itself a little bit fuller, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, now we're going to sprinkle some flour and rub it in and shake that off. And now what I'm going to do, this time I'll make spaghetti. Start rolling it very, very tightly. Not too tightly. You don't want to squeeze it together. You just want to make sure that so it looks like a crescent roll now. So now what you're doing is you're just slicing very, very thinly the size of the pasta that you want. Whoops, that one came out a little bit thicker. Doesn't really matter. Okay, we're back. As you see, I can start to unravel some of these pinwheels that we've created, and here is our pasta. This is what my mother would call malfatti because they're all very differently shaped and in different widths. Malfatti means badly made, but I think they'll work. So see how easy it is just to have your own pasta without having to have really too many tools to work with. You just need your hands and a rolling pin and some pasta and dough and you're good to go. Okay, I'll stop after this one here because I wanted to show you. You notice that I rolled this the short way and then the lengthwise. You can also do it the other way where it's wider than it is long, and what happens there is that your noodles will be shorter. So let's do a few of those. And again, I'm trying to be a little neater this time. So here again, you just unravel the pinwheels and you've got your pasta. Homemade pasta usually cooks between 8 and 10 minutes. You want to make sure that you throw your noodles in a very hot boiling water with salt. You want to make sure you add salt. What you can also do is add just a tad of olive oil to your water. That's something that my mother taught me, and she said it just gives it a nicer flavor. So that concludes the end of my pasta making session. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon for some lasagna and ravioli session. Hi everyone, back again. There's a couple of things that I missed in telling you about the pasta machine. So right now what I'd like to explain is that on the machine you'll find a dial here from 1 to 6, 1 being the largest setting, and that's the first one you want the pasta dough to go through. So I have a couple here that I'm still working with. So I'm going to start the machine and let it go through the first time. And you can fold it to make it even and wider or easier to manipulate when you're working with it. But here we go. Now this is the thickness of the first setting. However, this is not really useful as for any kind of pasta, lasagna, ravioli, or whatever. So we're going to move the setting to a number 4. It's a little tough. There we go. To the number 4, and now I'm going to run the piece of pasta once again. And now you'll see how much thinner it is. And I prefer to run it through a couple of times just because it makes the dough more silky. So that explains the machine. If you don't have a machine, you don't have to worry about settings. You just need to roll your dough out as thin as possible and then cut it with a knife. Again, thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.